it's funny, really. I think, in a way, Ginny was the balloon up in the air, and I was the tether on the ground, stopping her going completely off her like that. She was wonderfully outgoing, and I used to love it when she used to speak. I just talked for 10 minutes, and 25 minutes later she's still at it, you know. But people loved it, really, and she was much more spontaneous than I was, and things like that. And I loved it, and actually we were probably better as a team, as it were, in our different strength and this sort of thing, than we were, as it were, individually.
So you basically moved your whole family, house, jobs and everything from London to Winchester to be involved in this church.
Absolutely. It's a massive, massive story in itself, all of that, and it's quite amazing what God did, and the way that He did it, because there were all sorts of twists and turns in it, as almost there always is. But you've moved, so you know how it goes. Hugh did say to me, "Could you look after the children's work of the church?" And I said, "Absolutely fantastic. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing." There was probably about 20 children at that stage, between sort of 5 and 10, 5 and 12. We seemed to have quite young families at that point. We were very keen that the children got the whole package. The children, I used to constantly say, are not the church of the future, they're the church now. And they really, really did need to have the full range, if you like, and that the adults were experiencing. Yeah, teaching them about God, obviously teaching them about the Holy Spirit, all about things like that, but even more so experiencing, God's touch as a father, as, like I used to say, big brother Jesus, and the Holy Spirit empowering them to do what they needed to do in their world and in their time. We had like a little prophecy school for the kids, and I'm talking about kids from 11 down. And we used to just get them to understand that God could speak to them, and God could say things either to each other or generally, and have pictures and visions and words of wisdom and what have you. And the kids started going up to some of the adults, like after the service or whatever, and saying, "We think God's saying this to you." And how kids do it, they just run up to somebody and say, "Oh, we think God's telling you this, da 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 da," and then run off again and go and kick a ball or something like that. And it was quite interesting because not all the adults were able to take this, shall we say. Well, I remember one comment of, "What are you doing teaching children about prophecy? I don't do anything with prophecies. Why should my children, I got to say as well, we had fantastic people helping us. We had a fantastic team. We taught healing, and we sort of demonstrated amongst them. And then I asked volunteers from the adults to come along, just if they wanted to be prayed for by the kids. And I remember this older woman came along, and she had about 3 or 4 of the kids gather around her. And she had a particularly bad leg, which I think had gone on for years, and several times been prayed for. And she just thought she was being nice to the kids to let them pray. Of course they prayed, and it was immediately gone. And she was like the woman at the well, She just ran around everywhere telling everybody what the kids had done.
Brilliant.
It was just fantastic.
Wow.
So there were lots of fun times like that.
Great.
I'm not going to say it was all easy, but there were lots of terrific things that went on.
I started here when I was very, very young, 12 years old, or 13 perhaps, and there were only about 3 of us of that kind of age group in the church at the time, so it kind of involved everyone sort of pitching in to keep us under control and out of mischief. I remember one recently graduated student who was fantastic, and he took us out one Sunday during the service in his Land Rover, and we tore around Hampshire. It was absolutely brilliant for us, not so brilliant for the parents who finished the service and were wondering where we'd gone half an hour later. I can also remember times in the back of the warehouse, which is no longer there. It's freezing cold under a sort of cargo net that had been strung with CDs. I don't know whether this was to try and keep us warm or to look cool, but it didn't really achieve either of those. I remember the point at which Andy Hyder sort of took over the youth, which was a game changer in so many ways.
At that stage, we just bought this building, and they had sort of a partition wall, a false wall, just where the PA desk is, and half of the hall was being used as a church, and then the other half behind this wall was basically derelict. It was where all the garage stuff kept all their tyres and pieces of iron and planks of wood, whatever it may be. And certainly when we first started the youth work, there was no risk assessment or no health and safety. And so we used the back of that area for our youth club. So kids would come down on a Friday night, hang out in the area, things falling on their heads, scrape themselves on a bit of iron. It's fine. It's just get on with it. It's fine. So that was kind of the startings of the youth club here.
So there was Voice on a Friday evening, which was the youth club, and myself and Vicky would go along as kind of the older, or the young helpers, or the older teenagers. But that would happen in the back of the warehouse. There was this kind of just crazy warehouse with a cargo net, and that's where we would meet.
The building itself was obviously clearly not what it is now. And so there were vast areas of the building that couldn't be used. And so we had groups in the senior pastor's office, and things like that, and the little prayer room that we always had. And so there were little groups dotted all around the place. But yeah, it was chaos, really. It was organised chaos. But still it was fun, because still God was turning up and doing things with the kids, and it was wonderful to see them growing.
I was part-time for Vineyard, but I was also part-time for Westgate School as well. And the kids from the estates up at Highcliffe, they would know me at the school, they'd get on really well with me, and it was a really natural way for them to come down and just engage with the young people down here. But then we also had the church young people as well, the Hibbert Hinkstons, the Laws, all those sort of people that were here met sort of 20 years ago. And just seeing those two groups of young people just merging together, making really strong friendships, and growing from each other, learning from each other. It was just fantastic. We used to go away for weeks away in the summer, and it was a really, really fantastic time. And I think, over the years, it's been a blessing to see that really grow here, and the youth and the children's work grow as well. So, good memories.
It's amazing that probably after the rap from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Andy's raps are probably the most well-known raps across Winchester. Multiple generations of young people.
Now in the beginning God created the world, it was perfect, there was no sin, there were animals, every kind of life, including Adam and his wife.
His comedy songs at pretty much every Winchester Vineyard event whilst I was a teen, again, stuck in my head ever since. And even now, as I look at the thriving youth group, and I think of the days under the freezing cargo net, throughout it's the investment that adults in the church have made in the youth has been so invaluable. I think you'd be pretty pushed to find that adults under the age of 50 have been in this church for more than a decade who haven't at some stage helped out taking young people to Soul Survivor, or hosting a youth event, or welcoming young people into their life groups, and that's really special and amazing as a young person to have that opportunity to feel part of a community that loves God and invests in its young people.
I have so many memories being a child growing up at Winvin, all of them very good. Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is the donuts. Specifically, I remember a tactic that me and the Brand boys would use, Adam and Richard. So the three of us, we would take in turns to go and collect our donuts, and we would take 3, explaining to whoever was on duty that of course we were taking 3, 2 of the donuts being for the other 2. And then we would rendezvous together outside the steps of the side entrance, each with 3 donuts, 9 in total. and we would have a feast, and we felt very proud. Feel a little bit bad about doing that now.
We turn up, and Ginny happened to be preaching, and she was preaching on Joshua. I was a bit unsettled because I'd been taught that women don't preach from the front. So after the service, I went and spoke to Hugh, who was very kind and gracious. I could see he was like a bit tongue-in-cheek, but anyway, he was very gracious, and I was reassured up to a point, but I thought I'll keep an eye on things, because by this time I wanted to come back. I could sum it up in one word for me. In my heart, I felt freedom. I just felt I'd been let out of the cage somehow. We were embraced and encouraged, and I just felt this sense of freedom in God, freedom to worship. Hugh and Ginny had a real heart for the community. For some reason, they saw fit to ask me to head up Compassion and Outreach. So I actually closed it down and prayed like mad that God would give me a right-hand person. I had a picture of Jill Jameson's face very clearly. We had half a cupboard to start with. Big Fish were very, very kind. They let us have the whole of the cupboard, which was great. So that was all fitted out and all bins labelled, and we built really good relationships with the agencies. And we got lots of agencies on board. One day this young lady came in a terrible distress state, and she had lots of troubles. She'd got herself into a bit of a pickle, and she just came and she just wanted to pour out, really. She didn't want anything. We helped her she had 3 children, and we used to help her with clothes for her children. That's how we got to know her. But she just came and just poured out, and she felt that she said she felt she could come to us because we wouldn't judge her. Quite often, we would get the opportunity to pray for people. And remember one day Jill and I praying for this little girl. Her mum had come in, she was in a pushchair, but she used to fit several times a day sometimes, and we prayed for her, and the mum came back to us and let us know she'd not fitted since that day.
When we arrived at Winchester Vineyard 16 years ago, it was when Hugh and Ginny were the leaders, and we both had a vision to see Christian healing in many different forms be brought into the local church. And we shared our vision with them, and they welcomed it with open arms. Around about the same time, God gave me a vision, and again, you and Ginny embraced the vision. It's where I was on the top of a cliff with the Lord, looking down into a river valley, and there was a river at the bottom, and it was flowing out to the sea, and it was surrounded by mountains, and down the mountains were many different kinds of streams. And the Lord said, these are the healing streams that I want to bring into my church, starting here at Winchester Vineyard. And I want you to know that I am in all of them.
We have a great team of people who work with us in the church that support all these ministries, and we've been very grateful to God for their time and the energy they put into helping, supporting, praying and running the courses.
Changes That Heal is the most recent edition, and we started this in the COVID, in the pandemic, looking at mental and emotional health. It's been extremely popular over the last 3 to 4 years as it looks at emotional, mental and spiritual health.
I joined the Vineyard in 1991. I was in Birmingham, I just finished uni, and I was drifting around a bit in my faith. And I ended up in this small church that had just been planted not very many years. about 20, 25 people, but with a big vision. And it felt like home the moment that I went there. And we served there for many years. We got married, we had our kids. And the thing that we got into was doing kids ministry, children's ministry. And we served that church and led the children's ministry there for well over a decade. We kind of realised that God was beginning to move us on. And that was quite a big process and quite a big journey anyway, just trying to hear his voice. But one thing that came up was the opportunity to come and explore a role here at Winchester Vineyard. So we came down one day just to meet with Hugh and Ginny.
As we went into the room, I saw some rails of beautifully cleaned and hung clothes, wonderful resources to be given out to the poor in the community, and really embarrassingly, I started to cry. I was really overwhelmed and struck by the love and the care that were taken to give things to people who needed it in the local community. And having come from a church where there was a big heart for compassion and having developed some of the compassion ministry there as well, it struck me that Winchester wasn't just somewhere in the south which was maybe rich and posh and well-to-do, but it was a place where there is a church who love their local community, and there are people around who needed to see the love of Jesus expressed in really practical ways.
You know, I let it be known around the vineyard we were looking for people to take on, and there were two couples that came up. You were one, and the other couple, and we had you to come and preach with a view. And Ginny and I knew that you were the people.
And we just knew it was the Lord. I mean, it would entail uprooting our family and moving down south, finding new schools and a house to live in and all of that kind of stuff. But we just knew that it was a God thing.
You know, I do it and you watch. We do it together. You do it and I watch, in 3 terms, really, which was the year. I had a sort of group of people who watched over me to make sure I was letting go. You know, when you're in charge, letting go is very difficult. Of course, there's nobody like me. Well, of course, it's not in fact true, but you think that.
That's how you feel.
That's how you feel. And I wanted to make quite sure, so I had a group of people who watched over Ginny and I to make sure that we were relinquishing things.
We arrived at the start of 2011, and we spent the next year working alongside Hugh and Ginny to prepare for the transition, and then we ended up taking the leadership on just towards the end of 2011.
We very much felt that we were joining a church family who were in a process, were on a mission, were serving the local community and wanting really to engage with the presence of God, and those are things that we love too.
Ginny used to stand at the back of the church, and it was almost like she had her arms outstretched and said, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you think you've done, you're just so welcome here. And she said that to people, and she said it to the Lord, and that was kind of what defined this church for us. And the other defining phrase that Ginny always used to say was, and Hugh, to be fair, this is the church of the second chance, and the third chance, and the fourth chance. And we just loved that. We loved that heart that was in the church.
We came as quite green leaders, really. We'd read in different contexts, but we hadn't led a whole church family before. And so we've had to learn a lot, and been so grateful for the many gracious people who've helped and supported and encouraged and challenged us along the way. And we've also found Winchester Vineyard to be an amazing place for our children, a place where they can be themselves, where they know they're loved and valued and cared for as they work out their own journeys with God.
We've just been blown away by the faithfulness of God in so many different ways.
I was thinking about COVID and how we had to find very different ways to worship together. We did lots of stuff online, as many churches did, but we also had to wear masks. And I remember sitting in the main hall one Sunday, sitting 3 meters apart from people on either side, wearing a mask, not even being allowed to sing. And we even had church in the car park, and on some Sundays having all-age services where families sat in the open boot of their car and the children ran round their own car as playing games and as part of the exercise and a way of worshipping God. And so we've had to be really kind of creative in the different ways that we could express community together. But that did provide us with a brilliant opportunity for the city, because a lot of the time we couldn't use our main hall for worship. We were able to offer it to the local food bank, the Basics Bank. They needed an expanded space for the hugely increased activity that they had. They were being donated lots of food, and they also needed a space to spread it all out so their volunteers could be socially distanced. And so we were delighted that they could use our main hall for their operation. And then a number of people in the church family were involved as drivers, taking food out to local people who were unable to otherwise feed themselves in that season.
Again, we've seen God be so faithful. Our youth ministry has grown from strength to strength. We have an amazing cohort of vibrant young people. We all know that mental health and well-being is a big issue for young people in our society, and we're just delighted somebody gave us a bus and we were able to explore how we could use that to really invest in the youth of our city. It's taken a long time for the bus to get on the road.
Quite literally.
Yeah, literally. But it's now out there in schools and in communities, and there are opportunities to see it. We really want to see that grow this year.
I used to ask myself frequently, if I wasn't paid, would I be here on a Sunday? And I can honestly say that of the 17 years we were at Winvin, there were probably only 2 or 3 Sundays when Ginny and I wouldn't have been there except we're being paid. I mean, we loved it.
So as we reflect on the past 30 years and celebrate our 30th birthday, we are really aware that so many people have been part of this story.
Yeah.
So many people have contributed time and energy and money and prayer, have put their shoulder to the wheel to start this church and to continue to see it grow and build.
Many of those stories happened behind the scenes. Many people put so much work in and effort in and prayer in that we'll never know about. But if you are one of them, just thank you, and we honour you and we celebrate you.
When we're celebrating now, we want to glance backwards but look forward, because actually it's wonderful to celebrate what's happened, but actually it's what's going to happen, building on the foundations of what's gone before.
This is a work of God. This is something that no human could do on their own. It's far more important than any of the individuals. Yes, Hugh and Ginny played an amazing part in obeying the call of God and getting this church started, and we have loved serving and leading in this space. But as Joe said, there are so many others, and this, what God has done here over the last 30 years is so much bigger, so much better than any individual could ever kind of get going, really. And we feel privileged and proud to serve here and to be part of what God's doing in Winchester Vineyard.
And we're really looking forward to what the next season brings.